Okay, let's unpack this. Cast your mind back, if you can, to September 11th, 2001. It was a day just etched into global memory, wasn't it? When ordinary passenger planes became weapons.
Yeah, millions watched it happen, just stunned. The Twin Towers falling, the Pentagon hit.
And that fourth plane crashing in Pennsylvania.
Oh.
Unimaginable bravery from the people on board.
Absolutely. And that single day, it just immediately laid bare some, well, significant vulnerabilities in U.S. security.
Which led pretty quickly to the Department of Homeland Security, right?
Exactly. A direct consequence.
And, through all that shock, the chaos, one name surfaced almost immediately as the architect. Osama bin Laden.
The leader of al-Qaeda. Suddenly, a name that, frankly, few outside certain intelligence circles really knew became globally infamous overnight.
And the question for everyone, governments, the public, was suddenly, urgently, who is this person?
And where is he? Where could he possibly be hiding?
That's exactly the mission for this deep dive then. We're going to step right into the material you've shared with us. We'll trace bin Laden's journey from his pretty unexpected background and his radicalization through al-Qaeda's rise, those attacks, and then that incredible decade-long international hunt that finally found him.
Yeah, we'll pull out the essential insights, the details, some surprising stuff in there.
So starting with his background, it's striking, isn't it, how different it was from the image many might have had.
Totally. He wasn't from poverty or anything like that. Bin Laden was one of, get this, 56 children.
56?
56 children of Mohammed bin Laden. And Mohammed, he was a self-made billionaire, came from Yemen, started as a worker in Saudi Arabia, and built one of the biggest construction companies in the Middle East. Very, very close ties to the Saudi royal family.
That's a world away from a typical upbringing. And Osama, it seems, wasn't really into the leisure lifestyle some of his siblings maybe pursued.
Not at all. The material says from a young age, he was intensely focused on religious matters. He did study business administration formally at university, but his real energy, his focus went into religious sciences. He learned from some pretty influential figures, like the Egyptian scholar Muhammad Qutbi and the Palestinian Mujahid Abdullah Azzam.
And that university period, King Abdulaziz's university, that was where it really happened for him, the radicalization.
Absolutely crucial. Yeah, that's where these radical ideas started to, come together for him, and where he began developing the skills, the framework for promoting jihad more broadly.
Soaking it all up alongside his business degree.
Pretty much.
And he didn't waste much time putting those ideas into action, did he? The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in '79, that was a huge moment.
Pivotal. He saw it as a direct assault on Islam itself. Immensely motivated, he traveled widely, raising significant funds for the Afghan resistance.
Right.
A lot of money.
And by 1984, he teamed up with Abdullah Azzam, that former teacher.
That's the one, yeah. They were actively recruiting fighters, mainly out of Pakistan, to go into Afghanistan and fight.
And he wasn't just the money guy or the recruiter, was he? He got this reputation as a fighter himself.
He did. He used his own considerable wealth for the cause, sure, but he also gained this image, this reputation as a fearless, self-sacrificing Muslim fighter.
Which, as the material suggests, made him kind of an ideal candidate for future leadership in a group like al-Qaeda.
Exactly. That profile really mattered.
So the Soviets eventually pull out of Afghanistan. He goes back to Saudi Arabia, and he's actually welcomed back as a hero.
Yeah, initially. For his role supporting the Mujahideen, he was seen quite positively back home.
But that didn't last long. And this next bit, this is really where that deep anti-American sentiment kicks in, isn't it?
It is. 1990, Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait.
Right. The material points out Saddam needed cash, basically. Rebuild Iraq after that long, costly war with Iran.
And facing this invasion, while other Arab countries were terrified, understandably.
So they turned to the U.S. for help, for military backup.
They did. And bin Laden, who, it's really clear, already harbored this deep dislike, maybe hatred for Westerners, was just vehemently opposed to having Western military forces stationed on Arab soil, particularly Saudi soil, the land of the holy sites.
He didn't just, complain about that. He actually did something.
Oh, yeah. He went directly to the Saudi defense minister with a counterproposal, a whole war plan.
Seriously, what was the plan?
He asked for permission to lead a force of 12,000 volunteers, many of them veterans, guys who'd fought the Soviets in Afghanistan to fight alongside the Saudi army and liberate Kuwait themselves.
Wow. So his own army, basically.
Pretty much. But the Saudi government, well, they looked at the options. Bin Laden's untested volunteer force versus the U.S. military machine.
Not really a contest in terms of firepower.
Right. They chose the superpower.
Yeah.
And for bin Laden, that decision allowing U.S. troops in, that was an unforgivable betrayal.
A betrayal by the Saudi rulers.
Absolutely. That decision, then Operation Desert Storm starting, the ongoing U.S. presence, that was the spark. That's really the starting point of the major tension between him and the U.S.
And he leaves Saudi Arabia because of it.
He does. Deeply resentful. He left for Sudan around 1991, just as things were kicking off in Kuwait and Iraq.
And from Sudan, that's when al-Qaeda starts hitting U.S. targets.
Yeah.
Early 90s.
That's right. They begin launching violent actions against U.S. interests from their base in Sudan.
But he gets kicked out of Sudan eventually.
Yeah, international pressure built up. Western countries especially were leaning hard on Sudan for supporting al-Qaeda. So he was expelled in 1996.
And where does he go next? This is crucial.
Afghanistan. Again, this time he finds refuge and support from the ruling Taliban government.
Right, under Taliban protection.
Yeah.
And al-Qaeda's network really grows then, late 90s.
It expands significantly. They establish a presence, or at least connections, in Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Libya, Bosnia, Chechnya, even the Philippines. A truly global network was forming.
And they start carrying out bigger attacks from Afghanistan.
Much bigger. The bombings of the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, that was 98, killed 224 people.
Devastating.
And then the suicide attack on the USS Cole, the naval destroyer, in Yemen, October 2000. That killed 17 U.S. sailors, injured 40 more.
These attacks definitely put al-Qaeda and bin Laden firmly on the map as a major threat.
No question.
But even with these attacks, bin Laden felt what? It wasn't enough.
Apparently not. The material suggests he believed something much, much bigger was needed. A truly devastating blow to force the U.S. to just completely pull out of the Islamic world.
And this is where Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, or KSM, comes in.
Exactly. And this is fascinating. Well, initially everyone just assumed bin Laden was the mastermind behind 9/11.
Right.
It became clearer later that KSM was really the main architect. It was his idea originally to attack the Twin Towers using trained pilots. He brought that idea to bin Laden.
KSM brought the idea to him. And the detail about KSM's background.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, isn't it? Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, key planner of 9/11, was a graduate of the University of North Carolina.
A UNC grad. It's just jarring. And the planning he oversaw, It was incredibly complex.
Oh, massively complex. The source describes these simultaneous phases happening across multiple locations. Planning meetings in Malaysia, flight training happening right here in the U.S.
Right, in Florida and Arizona.
Coordinators operating out of Hamburg, Germany. Money being transferred from Dubai. Recruitment happening all across the Middle East.
Wow.
And all of this being supervised by al-Qaeda leaders hidden away in Afghanistan. It's mind-boggling coordination.
And the execution itself on 9/11. It reflects that precision, doesn't it?
It really does. 4 hijackings from 3 different East Coast airports. They specifically targeted planes on long transcontinental routes.
Because they'd have full fuel tanks, turn them into flying bombs.
Yeah,
and that timeline, it's just chillingly precise when you lay it out. 8:46 a.m., American 11 hits the North Tower.
Then 9:03 a.m., United 175 hits the South Tower.
Then, maybe 30 minutes later, American 77, after that sharp turn over Kentucky, hits the Pentagon.
Killing people on the plane and on the ground. Then, 56 minutes after the second impact, the South Tower collapses.
Unbelievable speed.
Then, 10:03 a.m., United 93 crashes in that field in Pennsylvania.
Because the passengers fought back.
Yeah, they learned what was happening from phone calls. Incredible bravery.
And finally, 10:28 a.m., the North Tower collapses. Almost 3,000 people killed in total.
The way it all unfolded, that near-perfect synchronization, it was just a terrifying demonstration of al-Qaeda's global reach, their planning, their organizational ability.
So after 9/11, everything changes. Bin Laden is instantly the world's most wanted man, #1 target.
Absolutely. We learned that within just 1 month, basically every U.S. intelligence agency pivoted. Their sole focus became finding, killing, or capturing him.
The CIA knew the Taliban had sheltered him before, right? After the Soviets left.
They did, but knowing he was somewhere under Taliban protection and knowing where exactly, that was the problem.
Which led pretty quickly to military action. October 7th, 2001, the U.S. and UK form a coalition.
Right. Operation Enduring Freedom begins. The initial goal: bomb Afghan infrastructure supporting al-Qaeda, capture their leaders, capture Taliban leaders.
And initially it seemed to work quite well. The coalition made rapid gains.
They did, yeah. They captured key bases pretty quickly. It forced al-Qaeda and the remaining Taliban forces to basically accept defeat, scatter, and go into hiding.
Of course, we know now that war lasted 20 years. The Taliban came back after the U.S. left in 2021.
Yeah, a whole other story there. But the source material does kind of suggest, maybe implicitly, that the war might have been shorter if they'd managed to get bin Laden much earlier.
And there was an early chance, wasn't there? Right near the beginning. Tora Bora.
Tora Bora, yeah. Immediately after the invasion started, bin Laden and a lot of his fighters fled into that cave complex. It's only about 10 kilometers, like 6 miles, from the border with Pakistan.
And Tora Bora wasn't just any cave system. It was a fortress.
Pretty much. Incredibly rugged and narrow valleys. They'd used it before against the Soviets in the 80s. And crucially, the material mentions bin Laden himself had ordered connecting tunnels built inside the complex.
For secret movement. Smart.
Very. So coalition forces figure out he's likely there. Operation Tora Bora kicks off in December 2001.
What happened?
Well, first, heavy bombing. U.S. planes hit the area for about 3 days straight. Killed a lot of al-Qaeda fighters hiding in there.
But not bin Laden. They didn't get him. Why not?
The ground force involved was surprisingly small. The material says under 300 soldiers. Just not enough people to effectively seal off or cover such a large, complex area.
So he slipped through.
It seems so. By the time the coalition forces reached the specific area where they thought his hideout was, he and a few guards were gone. Probably used those tunnels he'd built.
And there were other problems with the operation.
Big challenges. Lack of good intel on the terrain, for one. They had to rely heavily on local Afghan fighters to guide them, often bribed for their help. Now, most of these guys were genuinely anti-Taliban, anti-al-Qaeda, but some of them had actually fought with bin Laden against the Soviets years before.
So potential loyalty issues, or maybe just leaks.
Exactly. There's a strong suggestion, or at least a possibility raised in the material, that someone tipped him off, gave him just enough warning to escape before the net closed.
So the CIA hoped maybe he died in the bombing.
Right. There was some wishful thinking, perhaps, but nope, he got away.
Which leads us into those long years in the shadows, late 2001, all the way to 2011.
A full decade. U.S. reports suggest that after escaping Tora Bora, he probably made it into Pakistan by mid-December 2001, moved through the mountains, helped by locals.
And then things got confusing really fast. There was that newspaper report.
Yeah, really weird. Christmas Day 2001. The Pakistan Observer runs this front page story. Claims bin Laden died of natural causes, even quotes an unnamed Taliban leader gives funeral details.
Bizarre.
Just 2 days later, Al Jazeera airs a 30-minute video of bin Laden. He looks rough, tired, yeah, but he's definitely alive. And he specifically says in the video it was recorded 3 months after 9/11 and 2 months after the invasion started.
So clearly alive well after Tora Bora. Case closed on that theory.
Absolutely. So for years after that, U.S. forces searched those border regions. Pakistan, Afghanistan, mountains, valleys, but found nothing. No trace.
What was it thinking? Where did intelligence believe he was all that time?
The general assessment was that he and his family were probably moving constantly, secretly, between different cities in Pakistan, maybe sometimes back into Afghanistan, relying on this network of al-Qaeda sympathizers for safe houses, transport, everything.
Must have been incredibly frustrating for the intelligence agencies.
Immensely. A ghost hunt for years. But then, around 2004, something apparently shifted.
What happened?
The material indicates bin Laden himself reportedly got tired of being constantly on the move, decided he needed a permanent, fixed hideout.
Okay, that's a risk for him, but maybe an opportunity for the hunters.
Exactly. And this is where a really crucial piece of intelligence, developed slowly over years, finally paid off.
The courier.
The courier. Ahmad al-Qaeda. It was known, or strongly suspected, that bin Laden relied on this one trusted courier for all his communications with the outside al-Qaeda network.
And how did they zero in on him? Out of everyone?
It came from interrogations, multiple al-Qaeda prisoners over several years, but a really key source, according to the material, was Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, KSM again.
After he was captured in Pakistan in 2003 and sent to Guantanamo.
Right. Intel from him, combined with other sources, all started pointing towards this one courier, al-Qaeda.
So the strategy shifted. Find the courier.
Find the courier, find bin Laden, that became the mantra.
And they focused years of work just on tracking this one guy.
Several years, yeah. Just researching, tracking, looking for any sign of Ahmad al-Qaeda.
And they finally got a break in 2009.
Success. Intelligence finally located him, living in Abbottabad, Pakistan.
Abbottabad. Not some remote mountain cave. but a city.
A relatively normal city, yeah. Home to a major Pakistani military academy, actually.
Interesting. So the CIA refocuses everything on Abbottabad.
All eyes on Abbottabad. And by 2010, using satellite imagery, signals intelligence, human sources, they pinpointed al-Qawadi's actual residence, this large compound.
And the compound itself raised red flags immediately.
Big time. Looking at the satellite pictures, several things stood out as really suspicious. First, it was pretty new, didn't exist on imagery from just 5 years earlier.
Okay.
Second, it was huge for the area. Started as 2 floors, then they added a 3rd floor later, much bigger than neighboring houses.
And the walls.
The walls were key, really high walls, over 2 meters, maybe 7 feet tall, completely surrounding the property, and topped with barbed wire.
Not typical for a residential house.
Not at all. Plus, the whole design felt overly secure, fortress-like, right in this quiet neighborhood. The material even mentions the builder was apparently puzzled by the security demands, but al-Qawadi just told him, don't ask questions, just keep working.
So putting all that together, the new build, the size, the extreme security.
CIA experts basically agreed. This place looked like it was custom designed to hide someone really, really important.
The leading candidate being bin Laden.
Exactly.
So they found the compound. They strongly suspect bin Laden's inside. What were the options?
Well, bombing was definitely considered. Just take it out with an airstrike.
But they didn't. Why not?
A couple of major reasons outlined in the material. One, they still didn't have 100% absolute positive proof bin Laden was inside at that moment. High confidence, yes, but not certainty.
Yep.
And second, and this was crucial, they knew women and children were living in the compound. A bombing raid would almost certainly kill them too. High risk of major collateral damage.
Made sense to avoid that if possible.
Right. So after meetings, discussions at the White House, the decision landed on a targeted raid, a special forces operation.
Boots on the ground.
Boots on the ground. A commando team. It was seen as the best way to minimize errors, reduce civilian casualties, and critically to get positive confirmation. Either capture him alive or confirm his death definitively.
And secrecy was paramount, especially regarding Pakistan.
Absolutely vital. The operation was deliberately kept secret, even from the Pakistani government. They were terrified of a leak, just like might have happened at Tora Bora.
Didn't want him tipped off again.
No way! So, President Obama gives the green light. Operation Neptune's Spear. Early May 2011.
Who went in?
A small elite force. 23 Navy SEALs. They flew in on 2 specialized stealth helicopters designed to evade radar.
Stealth helicopters plus
a translator and a trained military dog.
Okay, so they arrive over the compound when?
Middle of the night.
Yep, around 1:30 a.m. local time, and almost immediately, something went wrong.
What?
During the landing, the tail rotor of one of the stealth helicopters actually hit one of the high compound walls.
It caused the helicopter to land hard, basically a controlled crash, inside the courtyard. Fortunately, incredibly, none of the SEALs were injured.
Lucky break. Did the people inside hear it?
Apparently, al-Qawadi, the courier, heard the noise, but initially just thought it was normal Pakistani military helicopters flying over, which happens sometimes. Didn't raise the alarm immediately.
So the SEALs weren't delayed?
Not really. At 1:33 a.m., just minutes after arrival, they used explosives to breach the compound entrance and stormed in.
What was the main goal once inside?
Get to the 3rd floor, fast. Intelligence pointed to that being bin Laden's living area.
Did they meet resistance?
They did. On the way up to the building, Ahmad al-Qawadi, his brother, who was also there, and one of bin Laden's adult sons tried to resist. They were killed by the SEALs as they advanced.
How long did it take them to reach the 3rd floor?
Amazingly fast. Just 9 minutes after they first breached the outer compound wall.
9 minutes. And
they reached the 3rd floor, confronted Osama bin Laden. According to the accounts, he made a move, possibly towards a weapon or trying to escape through a window.
Yeah.
He was shot multiple times and killed.
Just like that. Target neutralized.
Target neutralized. The team then quickly secured his body, put it in a body bag, and then they spent some time grabbing intelligence materials, computers, documents, drives, anything potentially valuable.
Okay, so mission accomplished. How did they get out? Especially with one broken helicopter.
Right, so at 2:05 a.m., the first helicopter, the one that wasn't damaged, took off. It carried bin Laden's body and the crucial intelligence they'd gathered, heading back towards Jalalabad in Afghanistan.
What about the SEALs left behind with the damaged chopper?
They had to destroy it. That helicopter contained highly classified stealth technology. They couldn't risk it falling into Pakistani hands, so they rigged it with explosives and blew it up.
Destroying the evidence, basically.
And protecting the technology. Then, a backup helicopter, likely a conventional Chinook that had been waiting nearby, came in and picked up the remaining SEALs and the dog.
And they were gone.
All extracted.
How long did the whole thing take, from the moment they breached the wall?
The entire operation on the ground, inside the compound, finding him, killing him, collecting intel, dealing with the helicopter, getting out, took only 40 minutes.
40 minutes is kind of stunning when you put it like that.
It really is. The source material makes that comparison like an athlete training for years and years for one short, intense race.
Yeah.
Those 40 minutes were the culmination of a decade of searching, intelligence gathering, analysis, failure at Tora Bora, then finally, success.
So they have the body.
Okay.
What happened next? What did they do with it?
Well, this part's interesting too. The material notes that for various reasons, maybe diplomatic, maybe security, maybe preventing a shrine, no country would agree to accept his body for burial on land.
Really? No country?
Apparently not. So the decision was made for a burial at sea. His body was taken onto a U.S. Navy aircraft carrier, the USS Carl Vinson.
Okay.
Islamic prayers and burial rites were performed according to tradition, and then his body, weighted, was released into the Arabian Sea.
And the photos. Did they ever release photos of the body?
No. And that's a key point the material highlights. The U.S. government made a deliberate decision not to release any photos of bin Laden's body after the raid.
Which, predictably, led to
Conspiracy theories, lots of them, claims he wasn't really killed, that it was faked, that he's still alive somewhere. The lack of photographic proof definitely fueled that speculation.
Understandable, I guess, even if unlikely.
Right. But despite those theories, the source concludes that eliminating him, the world's most wanted terrorist, was undeniably a significant moment, a major blow against al-Qaeda, and it brought, at least some sense of closure, some measure of justice, especially for the families of the 9/11 victims.
So you've just heard this incredibly detailed account, all drawn from the source material you gave us. We've really traced that whole arc from bin Laden's privileged background in Saudi Arabia, his turn to radicalism, the rise of al-Qaeda, the horror of 9/11, and then that painstaking 10-year hunt leading to the compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. Not a cave, but a house.
It's an amazing story when you lay it all out, packed with these specific details, the surprising connections like KSM's education, and moments that really highlight both the scale of the threat al-Qaeda posed and the incredibly complex, often hidden world of intelligence work needed to counter it.
Okay, so let's leave you, the listener, with this final thought, kind of circling back that last detail we discussed. Knowing that the U.S. government made that choice, never releasing any photos of bin Laden's body, does that specific fact influence your view on their claim that he was killed in that raid?
Yeah, what stands out most to you from everything we've just unpacked in this deep dive? Was it something about his early life, the planning of 9/11, the hunt, that final raid itself, something to think about?